Before we get to the podcast today, wanted to take a few minutes to announce the passing of Mike Sexton and say a little something about that. We lost him yesterday at the age of 72. Mike was ill with prostate cancer, and he had started in-home hospice care. This is news that sort of all came out in the poker world last week. And in true Mike Sexton fashion, this is not something that he actually wanted to put out there himself. He wanted to keep everything very positive and happy, and he didn't want to share the news with everyone that he was having a struggle, which is just so like him, I think. So how do you summarize a guy like Mike Sexton that has had such an incredible impact in what I do every day and what those of you listening choose to spend a lot of your recreation time on, or perhaps you, like me, have modeled your life around this game? Mike Sexton is a guy that played poker at the highest levels for decades. He's a guy that founded Party Poker, the company that's now sponsoring this podcast. He is a guy that was a commentator and the voice of poker on the World Poker Tour for decades. But all of that pales in comparison to who he was as a person, in that you could ask anyone in the world, and their experiences with Mike are those of kindness, of warmth, of positivity. So everything he's done for our game to bring it to the place where it is now, and don't get it twisted, poker would not be the same without Mike Sexton. We owe him a huge debt of gratitude, but to me, it pales in comparison to who he was as a human being. Personally, if I could model my life around Mike Sexton and be 1/10 of the man that he is, and do 1/10 of the things that he's done in his life, I'd really view that as a success. So I'm incredibly sad about it today. The poker world is sad about it and mourns. And for certain, Mike Sexton will be a person that won't be forgotten. His impact on the world will reverberate for as long as this game is played. So rest in peace, Mike Sexton, and thanks for everything you've done for poker. Hello everyone, how's it going? And welcome to another weekly Poker Showdown brought to you by Party Poker. I'm your host, Jaime Staples, and this week we have a legend of the game, a legend of the world on the podcast, Bill Perkins. He's just come out with his brand new book, Diet with Zero. I read it. I have some questions for him. Very interesting. I recommend you get it. And actually, at the end of this podcast today, we're going to give away 10 signed copies to those of you listening around the world. So great conversation with Bill. I think you're going to love it. But before we get to that, let's talk about some of the online poker news from this week. Let's kick it off with some of the WPT news, and the micro main event just took place on Party Poker. $109 buy-in, 1 million guarantee. It was a great event. I failed to make it through. A little sad about it, but that's okay. The winner of the event was Luis Constantino. He won out of 8,465 players, so just short of $149,000 for his effort. $109 buy-in, so amazing. Congratulations on the result there, Luis. The Brazilian beat Kim Hendelman heads up to win the title, and the winning hand saw both players have hole cards of ace-jack, and Constantino rivered a flush to win the title after Heidemann shoved pre-flop. So there you go, Constantino. I mean, ace-jack versus ace-jack, when you're running hot, getting it done, no. But I'm sure there was a ton of great play to beat out 8,400 players. That's a lot of players, and a deserved 149,000. So congrats to you, Luis, on the result. Some more Party Poker news this week. We have a brand new Party Poker pro. Benjamin Pollock joins the team. He's best known for his third place finish in the 2017 World Series of Poker, and he's going to be taking place in the PowerFest that has a 5 million guarantee in France and 4.5 million guarantee in Spain. That's going down on .eu, so not for the global liquidity, but for the people in France and Spain. That's happening. So just wanted to wish Benjamin Pollock welcome to the team. I'd love to have him on the podcast so I can get to know him a little bit better. I haven't had the opportunity to meet him before, so maybe in future episodes we can talk with him to come. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're watching this. Welcome to the team, Benjamin. Some more WPT results from this past weekend. Elio Fox, legend of the game, won the WPT big game this weekend for over 200,000. So congrats to Elio on that result. Dan Smith won first place in the WPT Super High Roller to win more than 260,000. The WPT High Roller was won by Sergey Reiksach for over 138,000. Let's get into the discussion with Bill Perkins. Bill is a legendary guy. I mean, I don't really need to intro Bill Perkins. If you've never heard of him before, he's an amateur poker player. He plays some of the highest stakes games in the world. He's a very successful trader, energy trader, and has just been involved in poker for the last decade or so. You see him on televised games. You see him on a bunch of podcasts. He's done projects with myself, with Jeff Gross. We've done Streamboats. We've done Ultimate Sweat Bets. And he's been a great source for inspiration and learning in my own life. So when he came out with this book, Die with Zero, I knew this was going to be great stuff and something I need to learn from. So I asked him a lot about that, as well as his recent engagement and more. So without further ado, enjoy the conversation with Bill Perkins. Joining me on the podcast today, I have brandly new engaged. I have an author. I have an energy trader and a poker player, Bill Perkins. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie. Good to see you again.
Yes. So let's start with the recent engagement. I want to talk about your trip, okay? So you just got engaged in Croatia. What happened?
What happens? Well,
I don't mean to set it up as a negative. Like what was the day like? I saw it on Instagram, but I want the people to relive it.
We've been hanging out with our friends on the boat, and Lara want to make sure we have a date night. We generally try and set up so that we have our time together to just do something alone. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll set up a very nice date night. It's what I have planned is it's well timed, so we can't be late. I gave her the things like normal date night. So we got on some we're gonna go out together in Dubrovnik, which is fantastic. Now, behind the scenes, what's going on is that the fort where I intend to do the deed is I had it rent out or shut down for an hour. You can't rent out the whole thing. It's a public place. You go up. There was a table set up for us to have like a dinner and watch the sunset. Like that would be our date, right? Like to have some sushi and watch the sunset. And then we were going to go do our thing for a little bit and then go meet the group, which was already planned and what you knew about. So it was set up. It was playing a couple of key songs in our lives, like right. Moment songs in the background when we got up there. So we got there and we were going to watch the sunset. We had some sushi, etc. And then once it came to a particular song, at the end of that song, the guy turned down the music, got up, reached down to a strategically placed box that was placed there already. So I didn't have this big box sticking out of my pocket, right?
That's a thing. I remember that strategy. I was like, how do I get this in? How do I hide this all day?
Yeah. This is a whole thing. I don't know. I guess women want it to be a surprise. You want to be like, tonight, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to propose to you. They want there's a little bit of surprise, right? And so it was there, when I sat down on my the guy secretly told me which side I'm sitting on. I sat, I looked, boom, it was there. So then when I went and grabbed it, I had this spiel, I gave my speech. Lara didn't hear a thing. She didn't know what I was saying because once I made the movement, it was whatever. Only thing she said, this is kind of funny. I told my friends, she goes, is this real? She's crying or whatever. And I go, in my head, I'm thinking, motherfucker, please. Please. That was me in my head. But I was like, no, of course it's real. I'm crying a little bit. She's crying. I'm doing my spiel. And that was it. And then we enjoyed the music back on, enjoyed that, whatever. And then we took a funicular up to the top to meet the rest of us. And then there was a bigger, larger little like buffet thing, pre-dinner thing, and there was music playing, and we celebrated with our friends that were on the trip, and then went to dinner at 360. And then, but when we got to 360, I had a toast for everybody. I would get a little speech, whatever. And behind the scenes, what they didn't know is that my assistant was waiting, and as soon as we hit the glass, she's gonna go, and then there was a fireworks show.
Oh wow, you do it big, Mr. Perkins. That's a big experience.
One time. Well, you know, you only get one time to do it with that particular person. You know, this is my second engagement, but like, you only get one ride. You know, and that's it.
That's true.
Everybody, it doesn't matter if it's that. It was just the you know, as I say, planning is romance. Romance is planning. You know, as long as you plan, you know, I've seen people do smaller but well planned out, thoughtful things. They're very romantic.
That
so we had a good time.
I watched it on the Instagram stories with Rebecca, and it was very romantic. I applaud your effort. And we were kind of suspecting, like, does she suspect, like, Lara was all dressed up, she was looking like a little sheepish on the boat. I wasn't sure if she might have known leading up that something special might happen.
She had conflicting thoughts, because she's like, it wasn't like really in the thing, but it was like, she said there was one sentence I said, I don't know, like, oh, she said the whole trip, I said that this is going to be the trip of your life. You know, but we do a lot of trip of our lives. So she's like, I suspected this. She was like, no. And then we were all dressed up. And then, I don't know, like those, she didn't want to get her hopes up or whatever, but it was. But then the only thing different is like afterwards, when we came back to the boat, we had a costume dress up party and went bananas with all our friends.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's part of it, the anticipation. Like, is it happening now? Is it not? Like, yeah, of course.
Batman dress up party, yes. No, you know, that was a lot of fun.
So how about the whole trip? Because it was a daily routine for me. I'd wake up, I'd open the gram, and I'd check your stories. I'm so fond of that part of the world, specifically Croatia, that it's just like, I need this to give me a little happiness in this you know, moment that we're in history. So what was the trip like? What are some highlights for you?
Croatia was definitely a highlight. You know, I've been there once before for a bachelor party, which I flew in, ran around the club that was going on. You know what I mean? Like couldn't get up the next day, missed that whole day, whatever they did, and then we flew out and we were in bar. And there was one like boat cruise day, like just around there, just hanging out, and I went to national parks. Every time we had a stop in Croatia, we would like rent bikes, bike around, get to feel it. I absolutely love Croatia. Love it. And it was the only place open that you could fly into. And it was also a pathway into Europe, because once you had done 14 days in Croatia and not been sick, you can go to other European countries. So it was kind of happenstance that we went there. It was almost like, oh, we have to go to Croatia. And now It's like, I can't wait to go back. You know, type thing. It's great. And, you know, Dubrovnik is a fantastic city. If you've ever been there, it's really great walking around. So I really enjoyed that. That was a highlight. And then we finally were allowed to enter Greece. And so we went to Greece for a little bit, and you know, then we went to south of France, rode around there, came back down. Oh, no, then we went to Italy for a week and stayed on Capri, rented a villa. And Capri is awesome, and you know, it was perfect. Usually the summer in Europe is like, you know, it's packed with tourists, right? Like everybody wants to go see these places, and they should, right? But all of us's there make it a little bit tight. Sometimes not to get the view or the feeling or mode you want. You know what I mean? When it's very crowded. And now it was like, wow, this is a normal city, walking city with just enough people to make it interesting, right? Right, like you're not in zombie town, and you have to put on a mask to go into stores, but it was really, 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 really pleasant. You know, like the movies. Like when I watch movies and I see people walking around Europe and the camera's going, I'm like, it's not like that. There's a fucking zillion people on the street, you know. And so it was like that, and we really took advantage of each spot the best we could by doing some activities that we normally would do, like doing a tour, or we started doing. We did a biking tour, then we did an e-bike, which allowed us to go much further around and see much more, right? And climb very steep hills, because you can switch the gears. And then we went off biking. It was just really probably one of the best trips of my entire life.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask your rating on it.
Yeah, because
yeah.
and a lot of it is like, hey, for example, we had been to Bonifacio before. Bonifacio is a great, wonderful.
Where is that?
It's in Corsica, like down the end. You come in through 2 limestone areas. Your boat barely fits through. It's really beautiful, and then the city's up top.
Right.
But then we decided to take wave runners and go around the limestone and just go out exploring. Right. Never done that before, and it was the best day. You have it on there. I actually had Charles say, "Hey Charles, get all my stories and put them together in a Dropbox." So I shared it with the group because everybody was like, "You got to share your stories. You got to share your stories." Like in a Dropbox at a group. But I might just make that publicly available. Like, here you go.
I think so. I think I still got Charles' number. I'm gonna message him and be like, "Hey man, can you share that with me? I want to check that out again. I want to see the movie of this trip."
Yeah. We were 15 minutes to this area where it's like waist high in between the island that's out and the shore, but it's a long way, and there's all these boats and people hanging out, and waist high, beautiful clear water, and we're running around, we're hanging out. And it's just we did that much more adventuring in these beautiful spots, and it made it 10x better. Right.
Yeah.
Because it took it above, just like slightly above cookie cutter, going to see something, which is good. You want to see it, you want to have the experience. But once we got outside that, like, hey, let's just go on a hike and figure it out. We were just in Croatia, right? Like, and then we would go through these vineyards and whatever, and then we'd like, where's the spot we can get to the beach? Guys, like, keep walking that way, and then there's rocks, whatever, and then we would find this, magical spot where we would just hang it. Never would have planned to go there. Never, wasn't on the itinerary, etc. The lighthouse wasn't on the itinerary. There was all these little things, like we were in the spot, but then we just went a little outside the edges, took our avatars a little bit out of town, and then this great, wonderful thing would happen. And so that was great. And irrespective of what type of trip you're taking, I would recommend doing that, right? Like, you're going to visit your friends in Oklahoma or something, like, let's just go a little bit outside town and found some, local place to eat, or, like country place to eat. And then there's like, wow, just discovery is wonderful,
Yeah, traveling is like, I feel like it's very different now because we have the gram, and people want to travel to a place and get it on the gram and do the things that are on the gram, right? That are cool around the world. But then I always found, like, sometimes I'm lacking that authentic experience of, like, what is it actually like to be Croatian or to be Austrian and to live a normal life, go to a normal restaurant. Like, that is the sort of stuff I really love in traveling. So I agree with you. Like, pushing the limits to try and figure out how to get that is valuable.
We're on the same page. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I always try, at least when a spot I want to go to, stay there a longer time, because you do have this, like, your friends and everybody who have done this kind of like cookie cutter thing, and they're like, hey, go here, right?
Yeah.
And then you're like, rushing, I gotta go to the Eiffel Tower, and I gotta go to Louvre, and I gotta go here, and then I gotta go see the hotel George Sank, even if you can't afford to stay there. You're like, you know what I mean? Like, you're doing like these kind of things. And like, I used to have this, I think I've said it before, like, I used to tell friends, like, oh, you went to Paris? I know exactly where you went. You went here, and here, because they were from Houston. And the Houston people all say the same thing, and they all, you know what I mean? Like, when you're there for a month, walking the city, walking around, you're meeting locals, and you're like, oh, let's go to dinner here, let's go to this pastry, let's go over here. Oh, the City Science Center has a free concert tonight out here. Whatever you go, it's all regions hanging out on the lawn, doing their thing. You know what I mean? Like, you're discovering things that, running around catching landmarks or cool spots that are hashtagged on the gram that are great photo ops. I mean, I'm not saying don't see those. Those are definitely worth seeing. You just don't get that.
Yep. I agree. I could talk to you about travel all day, but
yeah,
listen,
people are like, what the hell are they talking about? This is a travel channel now?
You've written a book, but I do have one other question as well about COVID, actually, before we go, because you were one of the first people in poker that kind of sounded the alarm. And I remember reading on Twitter, I'm like, okay, Bill is really worked up right now. I think this is going to be a big deal, but I think Bill's taking a little overboard. That was my thought. And then about a month later, I was like, holy shit, like, this is a really big deal. And Bill was definitely right. I remember calling you and asking advice from my personal situation. But you just went on this long trip in Europe. So I wanted to ask, sort of your thoughts on how you model that into your life and how it affects your health, and what has changed from those early days where you were pretty worried about the virus.
COVID is, first of all, I'm going to say some things because knowledge has changed, and COVID is still a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the distribution of how it is a big deal is different, right? If I were 21-year-old or at my age group, below, with no comorbidities, right? I'm not obese. I don't have diabetes. I don't have high cholesterol, right? And so the data that's coming out is like, okay, before I was like, oh my gosh, there's a 1 in 20 chance I'm going to die. You know what I mean? Like we're looking at numbers out of Italy, right? Like, and then I was like, wait, that's not the, people are looking like, well, that's only the people who showed up and got tested, right? That's not whatever. Let's get like, what's the true infection rate, right? Because what's the true death rate, right? And then that number started coming down, right? And then when you look into the death rate for comorbidities, and you're like, oh my gosh, don't be old. That's unfortunate. You can't do that. I'm starting to get old. I'm almost older than a baseball.
We're going to talk a lot about that in this podcast in a second here. We're going to talk about age. Yeah.
Don't be old. But the main thing, we have a blog that we put out that's out there that goes, we have one of our analysts go through all research reports, new things, pull up charts and data, look at it, do the math, is that if your risk profile changes depending on your current health. So it's like, get healthy or be healthy, right? And so when I looked at that, right, like once the odds change, my behavior changes, right? You tell me there's a 50-50 chance of dying if I go out that door. It's like we start nailing down the door. We make sure I don't mistake out the door, whatever. You change it, it's like 1 in 20,000, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, we'll start 1 in 10,000, I might peek my head out, I might, if something is enjoyable on the other side, I'm going to go outside the door, which is 1 in 10,000 is kind of my break point, right? And that's where it kind of uses an anchor. I use on the reward side riding around on a motorcycle, which I love riding around on a motorcycle, but I don't do anymore. And the odds of dying in a year of riding around on a motorcycle, which is 1 in 10,000. And so that's kind of like my risk reward anchors, and I look at that, right? And so bottom line is also, the treatment has changed, our understanding of how to treat it. So even if you do get it, like, will you get a severe case, right? Also preventatives like vitamins, zinc, all the other stuff out there, so all that created an environment where it was like, okay, the reward is here and the risk has gone down, and therefore weapons free, time to go live,
Right.
Also the preventative measures you can take, right? Like, before it's like, oh, I'm going to go out, I'm going to get COVID. Well, the transmission of COVID in outdoor environments is almost nil, right? Like it's not. How is it transmitted? It's an aerosol. So really most of the transmission is indoor areas, or HVAC, or traditional HVAC, where it's just circulating the air and these droplets are coming around and you're getting a viral load of 1,000 particles or whatever they think is going to be, right? Like, you don't want to be in an enclosed space, even just people talking, even if they're over there, because it just circulates and you're just breathing it in, right?
Yep.
And so all those kind of like, well, so I can go into this dangerous city called New York, but as long as I don't go on that block, I'm most likely going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of that thing. Like, there are mitigation measures, even despite the flat odds, right, of you dying. It's the same thing like driving, right? People put up the driving odds. The odds of flying is safer than driving. Like, well, let's dig into the numbers, right? If you don't drive drunk, you eliminate 1/3 of the deaths.
Right. Yeah.
If you don't speed, you know what I mean? You'll start eliminating this death. If you don't drive between the hours of this and this, you start eliminating deaths. If you don't text and drive, you start whatever. And all of a sudden, the odds of driving start to look very close or as safe as flying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's true with COVID, right? There's people work in hospitals, right? They don't get COVID, right? Because they take the proper protocols. So if you travel and you take the proper protocols, you're going to change your risk profile. Anyway, enough spieling about that.
Yeah, no. I think it's like the coming to an answer and weighing all those inputs is really a lot of what this book is about, Die with Zero. I mean, it's not specifically about health and COVID, but it's about getting the most out of your money that you make, your wealth, and then also your health, because those are both limited. So that's
Right.
that's the central thesis of the book. Where did this come from in your brain? Like, I know the doctor said I need to read this in a book, but like, what was the Bill Perkins juice that was going on that was like, this is how you need to live? Where did it come from?
You know, the funny thing is I just did a thing with it's been over the years, various points in my life. You know, I've been thinking about being making money and what uses it is. What is life? Like, what's going to happen before I die? You know, I've always been kind of thinking about my mortality. And Dr. Rana said one of the things that allowed you to be curious about this is that your acceptance of your mortality, you know, understanding mortality, not just from the sense that you're going to die in some abstract thing, but there is a date you're going to die, it's going to be over, and that your body is going to deteriorate, right? And that's from observation, right? Your experiences with your, you know, if you're as old as me, you know, grandparents have died, maybe one or two parents have died, maybe somebody else has died, you know, but like not just, oh, they had an accident or they had a heart attack or some disease, but like it was time to go, you know, like the body deteriorates and you've seen this deterioration and you're kind of like, you know, looking at people at different phases of their lives and what they do. And, you know, my arrogance as a kid, you know, when I was younger and there was like a rich older person, you know, and I was in New York City, right? These guys, I was like, who gives a shit that he's rich and he's old? Who wants to be old and rich? No one wants to be old and rich. They want to be young and rich, right? You know? And if you ask an old person, you know, like how, you know, aside from giving up all the experiences they had, whatever, but like if, you know, how much of their net worth would they give up to be 20 something again? They'd be like, ship it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know, so I wanted to, you know, I slowly came into the idea of like, you know, you can't use money and convert it into enjoyment, whatever that may be for you. The same as the same at different ages, right? Whether you're a baby, let's go the other way. Like a baby, you know, throw $5 billion in the crib, you know, they might wipe it or gum it or whatever, you know. And same for somebody at the tail end of their life, like, you know, they don't want to go anywhere, they don't have they don't have the mentality to do it, they just don't feel like it, they don't have the energy, and they may not have the ability, right?
Right.
And so I was like, great, then when do you want the most money? You know, or put another way, is when are you going to spend the most money, right? Where are these activities? Where is it needed,
Right.
right, for that type of life, right? Like, and then, you know, books, your money or your life, various interactions with people, just constantly thinking about this question, like, okay, I want to get the most out of life, right? If the purpose of life, like, is like to enjoy life, to have experiences, like, how do I model this, right?
Yes.
Right? Like, how do I model? Like if you want, if it makes sense to use all your resources before you die, right? They have no use when you hit the grave, right? And you don't want to be wasting your time accumulating resources never to use them. It's like guys don't go around and builders don't go around just accumulating hammers, right? And not using them. Right? Like, they build houses with them, right? They use them up. And so I was deeply thinking about this and just other concepts. Like I read a book called The Deep Hot Biosphere by Jay Gould. And that concept, you know, we all know this, right? But just the way he put that everything that moves is an energy processing unit, right? Machines, you feed them with fuel. We call it fuel, right? You know, and they move around the earth or whatever. And humans or animals, we call it food, right? And that food, we process that energy and it allows us, our neurons to fire, right? Electrochemical actions that fire, create sense chemicals to our bodies and allows us to move around, right?
Right.
And it's the processing of the energy. And the thing that hit me when he said that, like the derivative I had was movement is life.
Right. Yeah.
Movement
Okay.
is life. You know, processing energy is life, and the purpose of processing energy is so that you may move, right? And so I was like, you know, like that line, like it doesn't completely go that way. I was like, wow, so then your ability to move is correlated with your ability to live. how much you like, how much if you were making something called life points or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, so when you have maximum mobility, you have maximum life, and you know what I mean. And I was like thinking about all these things, and anyway, long story short, you know, from the realization that, you know, you maximize all your resources to get all this movement and energy and convert it, and your money, which your money is one of your resources, right? You have money, time, and your health, right? These are the three things that we have varying degrees of. Maximizing those at the right time to get the most you can out of life, right? Was the thing I just obsessed about and blathered about and talked with friends about. And what do you mean use all your money before you die? What about blah blah? What about this? What about that? Well, you know, and just debating these ideas became crystallized, you know.
Yes. Well, I have a question personally when I read the book, which is great. We're going to give away 10 copies signed by Mr. Bill Perkins himself in this podcast at the end of the show, so stick around for that. So one thing in my personal life that I seem to sometimes sacrifice my personal health, sacrifice my time, and sometimes sacrifice money is this idea of legacy. And I think it's tied to mortality and that acceptance of mortality. So I wanted to ask you, does legacy tie into your model here, and how do you think about legacy in regards to how you choose to make your decisions? You know, like doing something so that your name can live past your death point. Is that something that ever drives you or factors into your decision making, or are you present?
I mean, my concept of self has this ego, and I'm sure that, like, you know, I want to have an impact, but I think the you know, my legacy, I always say, is now. Right. And how history or future generations look at it, like, I think it's almost irrelevant, because at some point you will be unknown. It just takes time.
Yeah.
Right. The most vivacious, popular actor in, I don't know, Crete 4,000 years ago, we think there's no record. You know what I mean? Like,
yes. Yeah.
You know, the most generous guy, the most whatever, the most loved, whatever. There's just no record, right? Maybe there'll be better records 5,000 years from now, but probably maybe not 100,000 years from now. Right. You know what I mean? And so, you know, I'm like, I want to make what in this generation, for, you know, we get to ride this planet for a certain amount of time, and without the singularity guys and the technology guys, I'm saying, like, in 150 years, everybody who's on the planet now will be dead.
Right.
These are the people that we care and impact lives and change, right? They may affect subsequent generations, affect subsequent generations that they'll impact those future lives, but this is it, right? This is about being present. And so I think it's a form of being present that my legacy is now. Now, that might be your kids who outlive you and then carry it on forward. And that's how we communicate with future generations, right? We instill our values, which is our culture, right, collectively, into future generations, the younger generations, and then they modify it and go on, and it spirals on into the future, right? And then you have this future culture, right? And you can put negative things in that, and you can put positive things in that, right?
There's a lot to think about there, Bill. I'm going to think about that quite a bit, because I think it's interesting.
And so, you know, I'm you know, living past the grave. I'm not trying to live past the grave. Like in my, like, estate planning for my kids and what I'm going to give them, et cetera. You know, it's like at a certain age, they're going to get the money.
Yep.
I'm not trying to control them from the grave.
Right.
You must marry a guy who's on and blah, 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 and have the name Charles. And if you do not, then you only get this amount of money, and then whatever. Blah. Like, I live my life. I've made my mistakes. Go live your life, ride your ride, make your own mistakes. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's great. You talk about all the kids and stuff in the book. I'll leave that for now. I do have a question about the time buckets, which I think is such an interesting experience, something I've never thought about. And I was just talking with Rebecca this morning about, okay, let's get some ideas out, and, like, where does that best fit in our life? So could you explain time buckets, and then maybe give some insight into some of the things in yours for the life that you do have left?
I was actually just working on mine a week ago, but the the concept that you're going to have this bucket list and that somebody's going to come out with a megaphone, you will die in 1 month. And then you go, shit, give me my list. And then you start running around there. It doesn't work that way, right?
Yes.
It's not gonna, you know, there's also a movie called The Bucket List where the guy, like the two old guys run around, whatever. And it's like, it doesn't work that way, right? You don't, you're not going to have the time and half the stuff you put in your bucket, the things you want to do before you die. If you don't do them at the right time, you'll never do them, either because you don't want to do them anymore or you don't have the ability to do them anymore, right? And so it's not only important what you want out of life, right, which you have to get off autopilot and really think about what experience you want to have in life, but when, right? Before you have kids, after you have kids, before you get married, after you get married. You know, those two dynamic decisions, people don't realize that when you have kids, you made just about 50,000 decisions, future decisions that you didn't even know. You know what I mean? I tell people like, hey, you know, Dan was complaining about me leaving early to go to a soccer game when we were on some trip or doing something. He's like, you're crazy. Like, what about? I was like, Dan, I made that decision 13 years ago. I just didn't know it. You know what I mean? And so, you know, you think I'm making a crazy decision now. No, I made a crazy decision 13 years ago, you know? And also there's like, you know, health issues, right? Like me to go play pickup football right now, no shot. No shot. Back, whatever health situation, or, you know, so, and later on in life, it won't even be played like basketball. I don't even play basketball because of the injuries in my back, like jumping and running around anymore. So like, you have to slot these experiences in their right time, you know, and then even you know, figure out what experiences you want to have, because life is like Tetris. Like, you got to get the order right.
And I can't figure it out. Both.
What's that?
And I can't figure it out. It's both. I can't. I haven't sorted it out yet. The Tetris. Keep going.
Yeah. So like, it's like if you like put this experience before that experience, and you don't get to do this one. You know what I mean, or whatever. And so it's an ordering problem. And the other aspect of that ordering problem is that when people are like, oh, I'm saving money. I'm like, what are you saving it for? Right? It's just like money. Well, it's money. You need money to eat and whatever. Okay, after survival, what is the things that you want out of your life? Well, I want everything. I want everything. No. Really, like, stop with the TV and you know, you walked in, you saw the pies, and you want the biggest pie, you know, and you're being advertised. What experiences during each period of your life do you want to have? Right? What are the major ones and what are some of the minor ones? What are the ones that you can repeat? Like, I want to have sex 50,000 times before I die. Okay, let's start putting the sex in each bucket. Like, how many in your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s? If it's 50,000, let's just distribute them and see what it looks like. You know, you're gonna see a curve like this. You're generally just gonna see a curve, like a lot, and that fits the data and the activity level of older as people age. And making sure that you think about these things, get off autopilot, so that a period in your life does not pass you by.
Right.
And it's too late. Right? I always use, everybody's probably heard, anybody who knows me probably heard, like, my glow stick rave days are kind of done. You know what I mean? Like, the period passed me by. You know? My backpacking and staying in youth hostels across Europe and Asia, it's kind of passed me by. I'm not going in the youth hostel.
Yeah, you tell a great story about that in the book, about your friends that went on that trip and that you didn't go, and it's just like you're never gonna get there again. You know,
regret
not gonna happen.
So what time bucketing allows you to do is identify what you want, what you're saving for, or what you're under saving for. Right? Like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that Carnival cruise costs this much when you're whatever, and I want to do 3 of them. I need to cut back on my Starbucks, you know what I mean? And put the money here so that I can do my Carnival cruise, because I prefer that experience in the future versus a Starbucks now. Or it might be, no, fuck Carnival cruises. I want more Starbucks. You know, that's the experiences I want to have. And so by identifying these experiences that you have, not only do you like crystallize and get to optimize, you know, you're doing the ordering thing, right? And you get to know whether you're undersaving or oversaving. Right? And you get rid of this abstract cause money. You know what I mean? Like, it's not money. Like, money is just a means to have an experience.
Yes.
And I mean experience in the broadest sense, right? And so we remove that abstract. It's like chips in a casino. Oh, it was only red chips and it was only whatever. Like, you know, they keep you, right? They keep you in the abstract land, right?
Yes.
You know, and that's an abstract of an abstract, right? Money is an abstract, and casino chips it's a second derivative. They just start flying, right?
I never thought of us gambling life experience, but now I'm gonna have to think of that. Like, oh man, I'm really putting a cruise at risk here. I'm putting, like, you know, that's an interesting way to view poker playing. I think you're wagering life experience, aren't you?
It might drive you crazy, right? You're like, on safari.
Yeah.
You know. But
well, and so how about a specific one for you in your 50s? What's a time bucket, you know, that you want to do?
Oh my gosh, I want to pull up my home sheet. One thing I do want to say is that I say, hey, you know, it's a recommendation. You should time bucket. I'm gonna do this first, and then I'll go on mine. Okay. And I realize it's hard. It's not something that you just go do. It's like climbing a mountain. You have to take each step. Like, you need to sit down and then maybe try and put 1 or 2 a day into each bucket. Whatever. It takes a while to actually get off autopilot, get off all the noise and politics and bullshit, and think, shit, man, I'm gonna die. Like, this is not like some phony bullshit, touchy-feely thing. Like, I'm gonna have a toe tag on me just like everybody else in a fucking cold freezer, and it's gonna be within whatever, for me, 36 years approximately, right? 36 to 40 years. And what do I want from now to then? And probably when I'm 75, I won't be able to do X, Y, Z, 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 Z. What do I want for this time period in my life? What do I want to experience? And so, you know, having the family, let me just think. Family, it was, I want to see my kids graduate, you know, raise my daughters. I want to swim with the whale sharks before. Okay. I think I probably already said that. I've actually got a new one a friend just mentioned, and this is a great thing about experiences. They're radioactive, right? My friend just like, I went to the Redwoods. I'm like, I went to the Redwoods. He's like, no, I went to the Redwoods and I saw the tallest tree in the world. I'm like, you saw the fucking tallest tree in the world? Yeah, you got to swim, and it's a hike, and it's this pristine area. It looks like a Disney movie. And then you go, and the rangers won't even take you there because they don't want this many people going there, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I got to fucking go see the tallest tree in the world. I can't believe I didn't do this.
I think that's a challenge. Yeah, that's a challenge right there.
That's on my list. You know, visit Portugal's on my list. Things like that, right? Like yeah. I have it in like community health, charity. I really want to start directing some impact on the adoption front.
Right.
You know, so I have it in every, like, community, charity, health, blah blah blah, each bucket. You know, that type of thing. And
that's very cool.
I just keep dropping things in as there are definite things I want to have, and if they're like. So that's kind of it, you know?
Yeah. I love it, man.
I like training, and I was like, oh, I like training. And as I was going through this exercise, I'm like, but you can train. When I say train, I mean like ride on train. They have these like train excursions, whatever, which I actually sounds corny, but I fell in love with. They're awesome.
Training. Right?
Training.
In the UK, that's going to work out is training. I was very confused. I was like, okay.
In the US, it's training too, but I meant like riding the train. Like, exploring by train. Like, they have these wonderful, like, there's Blue Rovios, and there's trains across whatever. I rode on the Orient Express. I fell in love with it, and I realized it's this whole global thing that people are training everywhere, going around, touring that way. And I was like, I really love that. I want to do that. But I actually pushed that from 51 to 56 later on, most of it, right? Because I could train, you know, I could ride a train and see out and go and explore till, you know, very late in life, right? It doesn't take that much physical activity, et cetera. So it's like, why am I taking up time and money and putting my train stuff in 51 to 56? I got to move that over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And swim and find the tallest tree right now.
Yeah. And then hike Kilimanjaro goes here. You know, I don't have hike Kilimanjaro on there, but you see what I'm saying? You know?
Yes. Absolutely. I didn't even ask you about Goggins, but this podcast is getting too long on already. I understand he wants you to climb Everest or something like that. You've been hanging out with Goggins recently.
He's suggesting it. Like, I went with him, and I've been a bad boy. I've been like, pandemic really changed my odds of when I was going to die, which changed the math on whether or not I need to be in shape, right? And so I was like, rather poorly at first, kind of like gave up hope, right? And not really in shape. And we were hiking in Aspen. And I said, listen, Dave, I don't want to do all this fast thing. I'm not sure, whatever. He's like, no, I'll get my work done beforehand. So of course he gets up, who knows, 8 o'clock, runs a marathon or something, whatever. And he's like, we'll take a leisurely hike up Aspen Mountain. And I met David through Dan Blazarian, and we, they came down here and hung out for a bit, and then we met up in Aspen. He's all business, always training, but he was gracious enough to do his business early in the morning. His serious, then hike up Aspen Mountain with us later, right? Like he's walking around like it's like he doesn't have water. He's like, it's going uphill, coming back. I'm huffing and puffing my ass like 20 minutes into it. Yeah. And he goes, oh, he's like, Bill, there's up here, we can stop and go. I was like, Dave, I won't quit. I'm not quitting, no matter, what I mean? I'm not quitting because I know I can always just take one more step, right? Yeah. It might take a little bit longer than you expect, but I'm gonna get up there, So, with his help, encouragement, Dave's motivation is like, you got it, Bill, come on, like get me up there. And being kind basically the whole way up. Lara, I, Dave, his fiance, and Allie, a friend of ours, we made it to the top, and it was great. And he was like, I think he was like, you should consider Everest. And I was like, what? But he was extrapolating off of, right? And what he sees is like, I didn't quit. You know what I mean? Like I kept going, right? Yep. And he was, my heart rate was flying past where it should have been at that time because I hadn't been trained, and plus the altitude, right? Because Aspen will kick your ass with the altitude. But he saw that, and I think he was like, you can do this. You can do Everest. You can train for it. And you can whatever.
Yeah, that's intense, man. Oh, what are the odds of Everest? Are you doing it?
I think it's so slim because it's like one, I really hate the cold, and two, it's a 6-week thing or 2. Like it's a like not only just training, like all the hiking you have to do, but like you have to go, you got to stay at base camp for a week, you got to blah, 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 etc. And, it just doesn't fit. Like hiking Everest should have been before I had kids. You know what I mean?
You missed that in the time bucket. That one didn't.
Like if I'm one of those old hikers of Everest, like Everest would be great in 6 years, Yeah. Not great because I'm still like, what the fuck? Why am I out here? Like I could see myself on the side of this mountain, freezing, some sort of problem, whatever coming up. I'm just like, what decisions got me here, and how can I go back in time and change them?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I'll leave you with one more question, Bill, and it's a meta question actually, which is launching a book, actually writing a book and doing it is a pretty big undertaking. So I wanted to ask your experience from writing the book to concept to like now where I'm just seeing you on like every podcast and like there's promotions of the book going out and like I'm just seeing clips of Bill Perkins everywhere. So what's the experience like of writing a book?
The marketing team's fire. Yeah. It was a lot of like a lot of times we as humans, we talk a lot of shit, we don't back it up. We just like, I'm gonna. It sounds like a fucking R&B record, right? Like, I'm gonna love you, baby. I'm gonna, right? Like, and we don't do it, right? We just don't take the steps to do it. And finally, I was like, gonna take the plunge. So I got a ghostwriter, a writer to work with me, right? Like, cause like if I write a book and when I write my passages and I write it back, it's like I hand it over and it's like, okay, that's nice. Subject verb agreement. This sentence goes here. This one goes first. Whatever. So it flows better, right? Like my style, my voice, whatever. And it was really the process. The one brilliant thing that the ghostwriter did is she said, listen, even if you're going to self-publish, go through the process of trying to get a publisher because it's the same thing and these steps will get you there. And so instead of just, I'm writing a book, chapter 1, it was like, let's make an outline. Let's do a pitch story first. Let's pitch, what is this book about? What is it going to explain? What is it going to change? Who are you targeting? Blah, 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 blah. And so that's to get an agent. And so we wrote the pitch out, right? And it was like one step. You know what I mean? One baby step. Then talked to all the agents, got their feedback. They want to rep me or whatever. And I'm like, okay, did that whole interview process, how to rep. Then it's like, it's not completely done. Now we got to refine the pitch, an outline, sample chapter, whatever from the feedback that's going on or whatever.
Right.
And then go to actual publishers, talk to them, debate, whatever. Why is this book going to sell a bunch of books? Yada 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 yada. Why this idea? Why now? Why is it going to sell a bunch? And why you? Why is it you to tell the story?
Right.
And so they do that. Then they have an auction. They bid on your book. You cut a deal, and then it's like a lot of the work. A lot of the stuff like you're going to write a book. It's done, and you've gotten a ton of feedback. And we went through these steps, right? I think I would probably self-publish next time, just for the experience and just the fact that I've gone through the steps and I have resources, etc.
Right.
Taking that plunge got me to a bunch of steps that that you had to take, and that was a long process. It took so long, but you think about it, I was always fighting for more time with the publisher. I was like, what? I gotta have that by.
Yeah.
You're talking shit about how long it took, and whatever, and and then I needed more time. You always want more time, but having deadlines was great. Like, just like you have deadlines in your life, like you won't have toddlers, you won't have teens at a certain point. There's periods of your life that die, and those deadlines actually make them, in a way, it's sad, but it also makes them sweeter and actually forces you to act.
Right. Yes. Under the deadline. I operate the same way. I need the deadline. Yeah.
And so that happened, and it just was surreal. It becoming a book, right? Each chapter and each page, and it's like, and then giving it to my friends. My friend Cooper Ritchie did a lot of work of because it takes a lot of work to people don't read that much, and even if people that read, it's like, I got to read this book. You read it and actually give real detailed feedback. You take it back, talk with him, help him refine it. That was it was great. That part was great, just molding this thing, But I will say this, I got sick of my own words.
Really?
I mean, you just, it's so much talking about the subject.
Yes.
And it's so much prep. Like, do I get very technical here, or do I deliver a story? You know what I mean? Do I, how much data and graphs do I throw in here? Are people going to be interested in that? Now, people don't want to see that shit. Just tell the fucking story. Going back.
Right. Yeah.
How much do we talk about this health? Did we really balance it out? Whatever. Have we answered all the major whataboutisms? People that are going to refute this philosophy. It's just constant ad nauseum. So by the time it was like, Bill, you got to read the book for check, whatever. I was like, motherfucker. And then I had to go do the audio book, right? And I'm like, oh God, I just can't hear myself anymore, right? And then you get a little bit of a break, and then there's this media blitz, and you're just like, oh my God,
you got to do another podcast answering the same questions for a different audience. You've probably had podcast overload. When are you going to take a break from podcasts for a year?
Well, because I get to, you know what I mean? My home, if I was where are you comfortable, Bill? This, rapping, talking about people, debating with friends, because that's what I do, right? My friends no, that's stupid, whatever, but what about this? No, but what you're not considering is yada yada yada. I live in the world of debate, right? As a fundamental trader and just in life, that to me is juice. So a podcast is great for me, and I don't mind even hearing the same question, because there's different audiences or different ways to absorb information differently, right? You have to come up with other explanations so it hits them not just also in a logical way, but emotionally, so they're open to the idea. Because a lot of people get the facts all the time. They reject it, right? I get it, I rejected it, it didn't absorb, I kind of got it, but it didn't sink into me. And so it's important to me, at least, as to communicators who are trying to get a message and a new idea across, to be able to tell pass that information in different ways so people absorb it, Right. And each podcast gives me another at bat, to get it into your brain and into your heart and your soul. And you're like, I got it. You know what I mean? Now I will take action on this information.
Yes. Awesome. Bill, thanks so much for the time. I hope the people have absorbed this and go out and get the book. Die with Zero. It's out now everywhere. We're going to give away 10 copies at the end of this podcast. There it is. You prepare. I should have had it here with me. Bill, thanks so much for the time. I appreciate it.
You got it. Anytime,
Right.
Jamie.
Big thanks to Bill Perkins for taking the time this week. I love talking to Bill Perkins. I could do it all day. He's such a smart guy. I've had a few dinners with him as well. We talked about some of his trading stories. Honestly, if you get a chance, you see Bill Perkins at a stop, introduce yourself, say hi, because he's just got so much wisdom. He's lived such a big life. It's always a pleasure, Bill. Thank you so much for that, man. Now, before I let you all go, we are doing a contest here, a little giveaway of 10 signed copies of Bill Perkins' books. So all you have to do is tweet out using the hashtag JSPokerHero. And here's the question. It's an easy one. This is an easy one for you guys, okay? What is the title of Bill Perkins' book? We've said it a million times in this podcast. You better know this one, okay? Go ahead, tweet it out, use the hashtag JSPokerHero. 10 of you are going to be selected. We're going to get your details so that we can send you a book. So 10 at random, and we're going to send you a signed copy from Bill Perkins himself to add to the bookshelf in your house, okay? Thank you all so much for taking the time this week. I really appreciate it. We're going to be back again tomorrow, or next week, excuse me, with Benny Glaser, which is a great conversation coming up there. So that's it for this week. Thanks so much for watching, but until next time, we'll see you later.